Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. So, doing gaming news means that you've often got to pick apart big messes, and once again, we've got a big mess to pick apart. A game that released that seemingly did better than the developers could handle, and yes, fell over. In fact, fell over so hard that servers have had to be shut down for 7 days with blanket refunds. What's different about this video and this topic though is, well, I've been in their old office when it shut down. Yep, back when their previous project, Of Kings and Men, one you may have heard of, shut down, well, our studio picked up a bunch of cheap gear from their office. Yes, they were a part of the Northern Irish game development scene for a bit of time. So today, you're going to get the story, but you're also going to get another angle on what's going on here that you've probably not seen before. So the story of Last Oasis actually began years ago with a project called Melee, and then more importantly, Of Kings and Men, a very notable failed project. Now, despite getting very high initial early access engagement, Of Kings and Men failed hard. Now, they had promised more, like much more. Dev updates, actually showed off some of those features that they had promised, but they didn't actually appear, and even in the features, they seemed a little bit buggy. The game ended up losing its audience, and it was pulled from Steam. Now, what you may not know here is the behind-the-scenes situation, how that actually ended up panning out. It all started with Melee Battlegrounds, a failed Kickstarter by Donkey Group, the team in question, and that's for a game that was meant to be a spiritual successor to Mount & Blade Warband, but of course with a bit of its own flair. Now, while the Kickstarter did fail, they got picked up by an investor. Now, that much they have said publicly, and this is all stuff that they have said publicly. Now, they claimed that they got a deal that got them the funding they needed, but basically ended up with them working on very low wages, pulling 80-plus hour weeks, even more than that sometimes, and actually losing ownership of the game. And that meant that, yes, because of this, the game was owned by their investor, and they were merely the developer making that game. Now, this is actually where our paths cross. Our studio, link below, which was a little bit earlier on in its development right now, but it's in Northern Ireland. So the local government funding body, Northern Ireland Screen, who for an example were part of, say, making Game of Thrones be filmed, being filmed here, they wanted to grow the game sector in our city. Now, doing that via attracting a large studio with a large game that seems to be doing very well and it's got a lot of hype, that of course is a very prudent thing for them to do. So, that happening led to Of Kings and Men being developed about 100 meters from where I'm sitting recording this video right now. This is, of course, years ago, and some of their team being involved in the local games industry. Now, that was all fine for us. We were like, okay, new teams arrived, grand, time passed. But even to us, it seemed like there was issues because we'd look at the Steam page and we'd see the lower and the lower reviews and, mentioning the features that were being delayed. And then we saw many people claiming it was a cash grab, especially when things really started to look bad. Well, fast forward a little bit, and I got an email that was circulating around the local industry that their studio is shutting down here in Northern Ireland and that they're selling off their office assets. So, like that guy, Chads, that you'll have seen in the videos, many of us saw him around the place. He was a part of the industry. More on that bit later. Now, from that, we got chairs, we got monitors, we got mice, all at a pretty good price, some of which we still use today. So it's at this time when things really did start to take a turn. Overall, through that game's development, it seems like Donkey Crew were seemingly behind schedule and were generally experiencing development issues. They later claimed that they had significant issues working with the company that they sold their game to. At any rate, the project was obviously going south. Now, they claim that being completely tired of broken promises and being messed around by that investor, they essentially had no choice but to quit as the game's development team. And that's what led to them, of course, leaving Belfast. Now, after this, Of Kings and Men was sold to Warlock Wireless, who took over development. Warlock Wireless has since shut down. Now, from all that I know personally, right, with this situation, Chads and his team, I think they, disappeared. I think he, relocated to China for a bit, and I think he's now back in Poland, maybe? I forget. But the general consensus in our industry circles was that, yeah, these guys probably just had some regular development problems, but really got shafted with their publisher relationship, and it was just overall a really bad situation. Now, was it a cash grab, as many people thought it was? I mean, I get how, knowing no context of the behind the scenes here, you would think that. What I will say is when we went to their offices, I mean, they weren't lavish, right? There wasn't Herman Miller chairs everywhere. Their gear was pretty modest, and they weren't a skeleton crew either, so it was a pretty serious development operation. They had, their full-time staff. They also had a bunch of students from the same university that some of our art team, well, two out of the three in our art team were at. I mean, certainly if it was a cash grab, then, I mean, I doubt they saw any of the money, really, given that the studio itself wasn't that fancy and how they did not own the game. So when you think about the rev share there, it wouldn't be good implications. And one thing that I remember very clearly was talking to my co-founder, Thomas, who you'll see around in our Discord, but talking to him and him just saying that the mood, right, what it was like when he was there at the fire sale for that office. Basically, he said you could hear a pin drop. And Florian and the guys seemed pretty much devastated by how things had panned out. It was just like a bunch of, The Walking Dead there, essentially. So it seems like that was a bad situation they didn't want. And obviously Donkey Crew, after that, stuck together. And that eventually is what has led to this game, Lost Oasis, actually existing. And as for Last Oasis, well, that is another game made by that same team, Donkey Crew. They didn't change their name or anything like that, so it seems like they're not trying to hide their past. I mean, that seems obvious. Now, the game is one where the world has stopped turning, a single day lasts a year, and humanity is forced to live this nomadic lifestyle where they're chasing the habitable part of the world. Mechanically speaking, to me it instantly just looked like yet another early access survival game, but it does seem to have elements that make it unique. I mean, when I first saw it, I was a bit bored, and then I saw the land ships from the E3 trailer, and I really thought, okay, this could be interesting. And by most accounts, it seems like it's quite a good game for that genre. One of my friends played it, and he said that when the servers were working, it was an enjoyable game. But of course, that is the problem, when the servers are working, and they very much were not. Right now, the game sits at a 44% Steam rating, and that makes complete sense. It was essentially non-functional as a game, and going through the reviews, most of the reviews seem to indicate that it's a pretty good game, it's doing some interesting things, but that the servers are just bollocks. And really, a user's tolerance for early access server issues seems to be the primary differentiator between whether a review is positive or negative. Now, by the numbers, it's got north of 150k owners according to Steam Spy, and it launched to a peak of 25k concurrence. And according to our friend who had been following that game very closely and jumped in on day one, he said that issues began to arise at about 10 to 16k concurrent players. And then sales-wise, this game's been hovering around the top of the global Steam bestseller list on launch, seemingly doing quite well in China if the Steam review language breakdown is anything to go by. So, with all this stuff happening, how did the team respond? They've shared daily update videos from their producers, and they've set up a support account on Twitter. Now, with that, what is the actual problem? Okay, so from what they've said, it seems that their master server is playing up. There's a few problems, but one of the main ones they found was basically an ISP issue leading to server disconnects. Now, they had a thing where their automated system would attempt to reconnect once, and then it would just stop, right? And that would disconnect the server. Now, this had happened during their streamer event, and it happened again during the launch of the game. So they applied their old fix, which was to just have it keep on retrying to connect, but that actually led, because there were so many players and so many servers, that led to so many reconnect attempts that it basically overloaded their backend, and that is part of the instability. Now, that's what they said a few days ago, but it does seem like they thought at that point they could get the issues under control, but just today, they've decided to call it quits temporarily, with the game being suspended for 7 days and full refunds being issued to anybody who wants them, regardless of the amount of time that they've played the game. Very much unlike Steam's, default 2-hour refund thing. So overall for this story, I'll say this. They seem to be pretty honest. Right, that is a good thing here, and they have offered blanket refunds. I'd say that realistically, if this was a cash grab, what they would have done would just be to be extremely slow fixing those server problems, and they wouldn't have just taken them offline and issued the refunds. I think they probably would have then relied on people just getting past the Steam 2 hours and then just a lot of apathy and not actually cashing in their refunds. Whereas with this, they've been pretty darn active in saying, yeah, this is a terrible situation. You will unconditionally get your money back if you want it back. So that is definitely good. However, I do also have to be a bit more realistic here. If Donkey Crew were to release a third game, I cannot recommend you buy it in day one, even if it is labeled as early access, because there's clearly a track record of that not being ideal. I can't even say I'd recommend you purchase a Donkey Crew game when it's in early access, unless things look a lot more solid. Now, what I will say with this game is it does look like it's a pretty good game. It just seems like there have been severe server issues. I imagine this is something that sucks massively for the team. It's a situation that never really should have arose in the first place, but what I will say is that given the reality of the situation that did arise, they made the correct choice in doing those blanket refunds. That, I think, does show that their money is where their mouth is, and that is a good thing. I suppose what I have to ask, though, is how did this happen, right? You know, were the needed stress tests done? Because it seems to me, if I try to piece together the things here, they had this issue that was revealed when they did their, like, early sort of streamer play thingy, right? They had those issues. Then they came up maybe quite quickly with a fix to those issues. And then it seems like they didn't really battle test that fix, which is obviously not ideal. So clearly there have been mistakes in numerous levels here with the networking of the game. But in light of those, they have responded correctly by issuing the refunds. And hopefully, right, because at the end of the day, what do we actually want here? We want this game to be in a good situation so that whatever the unique experience that it is offering, that people want, that people can get that experience in a fair way where, you know, their money is actually going to a decent place and their money is actually getting them what they want. So my hope would be that, you know, come 7 days, this game comes out, it's got stable servers, everything's good, and everyone's happy. Because surely that is the optimal outcome for everyone involved. And overall, I think we should be chasing optimal outcomes. So there you go. That is what I think about this story. And then just a little bit of knowledge, or I guess just sort of the more personal angle for, yeah, it's just funny. Like, I didn't even know that this game was made by the Of Kings and Men people. So it was like a few hours ago, right? Where I just saw, oh wait, it's those guys that were in our city. That's what they're doing now. I mean, when I saw that E3 trailer and was pretty impressed by it, I had no idea it was that team who were like literally just over there through that wall and through a few buildings. So there you go, an interesting situation. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more stuff, there's more videos on the channel. And with that, I will see you next time.